At 56, Shannon Sharpe is remembered as a champion, a trailblazer, and one of the loudest voices football ever produced. But long before the television cameras and Hall of Fame speeches, there was something else shaping his career: anger, memory, and a ledger of truths he never forgot. He came from a place the league barely noticed: a small school, a small frame, a man constantly told he was not enough. Every catch he made felt like a rebuttal. Every touchdown felt like an argument. Shannon Sharpe did not just play tight end. He played with a sense of accusation, as if the field itself owed him answers. Fans saw the bravado, the trash talk, the swagger that seemed fearless. What they rarely saw was what fueled it. Behind the smile and the sound bites lived a man who remembered every slight, every coach who doubted him, every defender who tried to humiliate him, every system that treated him as expendable. Football rewarded his toughness, but it also sharpened his grudges. Success did not soften him. It hardened him. Titles did not bring peace. They brought confirmation. Confirmation that the anger had been justified all along. This story is not about statistics or rings. It is about the truths that followed him from obscurity to dominance. The rivalries that cut deeper than any hit. The moments when respect was denied, then violently reclaimed. Because for Shannon Sharpe, greatness was never just about winning. It was about remembering who made the journey harder than it ever needed to be. So the question remains: when the cheers faded and the lights dimmed, who were the people that defined his fire? And which truths did he carry long after the game ended? Shannon Sharpe entered the NFL carrying a burden most stars never knew. He was born in rural Georgia, raised in poverty, and shaped by an environment where survival mattered more than dreams. Savannah State was not a pipeline to the league. It was barely a footnote in NFL scouting reports. When Sharpe arrived, he understood something immediately. Nothing would be given. Everything would be taken. At 6'2" and barely over 200 pounds, he did not look like an NFL tight end. In an era dominated by brute strength and traditional molds, Sharpe was an outlier. Too small to block like the old-school tight ends. Too physical to be treated as a wide receiver. Coaches struggled to categorize him, and in the NFL, uncertainty often turns into disrespect. Drafted in the 7th round, he entered the league invisible. No expectations, no patience. One mistake could end everything. That reality shaped how he played and how he spoke. Silence was not an option. If he did not announce himself, he would disappear. Denver gave him a chance, but it was never unconditional. The system valued discipline, hierarchy, and obedience. Sharpe valued expression, individuality, and confrontation. That friction never vanished. It only hid beneath victories. Even as he redefined the tight end position with speed route running and vertical threat, there was always tension. He was changing the game faster than the game wanted to change itself. On the field, Sharpe brought something new. A tight end who demanded the ball, who stretched defenses, who talked back. His voice was as disruptive as his skill set. Defenders hated it. Coaches tolerated it. Fans were divided by it. And the league quietly benefited from it. His trash talk was not random. It was strategic. Every word was a reminder that he belonged. Every celebration was a protest against being overlooked. When he dominated elite defenses, it was never just performance. It was argument. Proof delivered at full speed. This context matters because Shannon Sharpe did not build rivalries out of ego alone. They grew from years of dismissal, from systems slow to accept him, and from opponents who believed intimidation would silence him. Instead, it sharpened him. By the time championships arrived, the foundation was already set. A player who measured respect as carefully as yardage. A man who never forgot where he started or who tried to keep him there. This was not just the rise of a star. It was the construction of a mindset that would define every conflict to come. There was no single face attached to Shannon Sharpe's fifth defining conflict. That was the point. His first true rivalry was with the league itself, an NFL built on rigid templates, an NFL that preferred silence over personality, an NFL that saw him as a problem before it saw him as a weapon. From the moment he arrived, the message was subtle but consistent. Know your place. Do your job. Do not talk. Do not celebrate. Do not disrupt the order. For players drafted late from small schools, survival depended on compliance. Sharpe refused that bargain. Every practice rep carried tension. When he asked for the ball, it was framed as arrogance. When he celebrated, it was labeled disrespect. When he spoke with confidence, it was interpreted as defiance. The same traits celebrated in stars from major programs were treated as flaws when they came from him. The league at that time was uncomfortable with what he represented. A tight end who moved like a receiver, a voice that refused to be quiet, a player who understood that attention was currency and silence was erasure. By redefining his position, Sharpe exposed how narrow the league's expectations really were. Officials watched him closely. Opponents targeted him physically. Critics framed him as a distraction. Even success did not bring immediate acceptance. He was productive but not protected, visible but not fully respected. The NFL benefited from his evolution of the tight end role, yet resisted acknowledging the cost he paid to force that change. One moment captured this conflict perfectly. During a nationally televised game, Sharpe dominated the middle of the field, stretching a defense that had no answer for his speed. Instead of praise, commentary focused on his mouth, his tone, his celebrations. The performance was undeniable, yet the conversation drifted away from football. That imbalance told him everything he needed to know. Sharpe internalized it, not as bitterness, but as fuel. He understood that if he wanted respect, he would have to demand it repeatedly. Not once, not twice. Every week, against every opponent, under every spotlight. This rivalry was quiet, but relentless. No handshake at midfield, no single confrontation. Just a constant reminder that acceptance in the NFL was conditional. Play well, but not too loud. Win, but stay contained. Innovate, but do not question authority. Sharpe rejected that logic entirely. He chose visibility over comfort. He chose confrontation over conformity. And with every catch, he forced the league to confront a version of football it had not fully prepared for. The truth is cold and simple. The NFL did not shape Shannon Sharpe. He shaped the NFL. And it resisted him every step of the way. That resistance never faded. It merely changed form. And the next conflict would give it a face. The fourth defining conflict in Shannon Sharpe's career finally had a name and a face. It was Ray Lewis, and it lived in the most violent space on the field, the middle. In the late 1990s, no territory in football was more dangerous than the space Ray Lewis controlled. Crossing routes were punished. Tight ends were discouraged before the snap even ended. Fear was part of the defensive scheme, and for many players, survival meant avoiding that zone entirely. Shannon Sharpe did the opposite. He attacked it. Every time the Broncos lined up against Baltimore, the matchup became personal, not because of trash talk alone, but because of philosophy. Ray Lewis represented defensive authority, order, intimidation, control. Shannon Sharpe represented disruption, movement, noise, resistance. When they collided, it was not just player versus player. It was identity versus identity. Lewis believed the middle belonged to him. Sharpe believed no space should be surrendered. Each snap was a challenge, each route a provocation. When Sharpe caught the ball over the middle, he was not just gaining yards. He was trespassing. The hits were deliberate, shoulders lowered, helmets aimed. The message was clear. You do not come here and leave standing. Sharpe absorbed it and responded the only way he knew how. He talked. He smiled. He came back again. Trash talk became a weapon, not to distract, but to declare intent. Sharpe wanted defenders to know he was not afraid. That intimidation would not silence him. Against Ray Lewis, that refusal mattered. It turned violence into dialogue. Every collision carried words. Every word invited another collision. One playoff moment crystallized the rivalry. Sharpe caught a pass across the middle with Lewis closing fast. The hit landed. The crowd roared. And Sharpe stood up laughing. Not because it did not hurt, but because it confirmed something. Fear had failed. To Ray Lewis, that reaction was unacceptable. Dominance relied on compliance. Sharpe refused it. He forced defenders to confront a truth they did not like. That intimidation only works if it is believed. This rivalry never needed a brawl or a headline. It lived in repetition. Route after route, hit after hit, game after game. Each encounter reinforcing the same unresolved question: who truly controlled the middle of the field? For Sharpe, the answer was never about victory on the scoreboard. It was about presence, about making sure defenders felt him there, about proving that the tight end position could not be erased by fear. The cold truth is this: Ray Lewis may have owned the middle with violence. Shannon Sharpe owned it with defiance. And that defiance changed how the position would be played long after both men left the field. But the most public confrontation of Sharpe's career was still ahead. One moment, one microphone, one opponent, and a rivalry that spilled far beyond the field. Some rivalries are born across the line of scrimmage. Others are forged in the same locker room. For Shannon Sharpe, one of the most volatile conflicts of his career came not from an opponent, but from a teammate: Bill Romanowski. Romanowski embodied everything Sharpe distrusted: aggressive to the point of obsession, loyal to hierarchy, comfortable crossing ethical lines in the name of dominance. Where Sharpe expressed confidence outwardly, Romanowski enforced control inwardly. Their collision was inevitable. On the surface, both men wanted the same thing: wins, championships, intimidation of opponents. But beneath that surface was a fundamental disagreement about power. Sharpe believed respect was earned through performance and presence. Romanowski believed it was enforced through fear and submission. The tension simmered quietly at first. Practices became battlegrounds. Verbal jabs escalated. Physical encounters crossed boundaries that teammates were expected to respect. Romanowski played as if teammates were just extensions of the battlefield. Sharpe refused to accept that logic. The breaking point came during a practice when a routine exchange turned violent. Romanowski struck Sharpe, shattering his eye socket. It was not an accident. It was not misunderstood. It was an act that exposed the darker side of football culture. The idea that winning excused everything, even betrayal. Sharpe was furious, but his anger went deeper than pain. This was not just about injury. It was about accountability. The league and the team moved carefully, weighing consequences against Romanowski's reputation as an enforcer. For Sharpe, that hesitation spoke volumes. He saw a system willing to tolerate internal violence as long as it came from the right kind of player. The tough one, the feared one, the one who fit the traditional image of football brutality. Sharpe did not fit that image, and he knew it. The aftermath lingered. Trust was broken. Lines were drawn. The locker room became quieter, colder. Sharpe recovered physically, but something else hardened. He understood then that danger did not always wear opposing colors. This rivalry revealed a truth many players never say aloud. The NFL preaches unity, but power dynamics inside teams are often ruthless. Certain players are protected. Others are expendable. Sharpe refused to be either. The cold truth is uncomfortable. Bill Romanowski crossed a line that football culture had blurred for decades. And Shannon Sharpe became the reminder that not all violence can be justified by victory. That lesson stayed with him long after the bruises faded, and it shaped how he viewed authority, loyalty, and the cost of silence. But the rivalry that defined him most publicly was still waiting. One that unfolded under the brightest lights against the most celebrated dynasty of the era. If Bill Romanowski taught Shannon Sharpe that danger could come from within, then Bill Belichick represented something colder and more calculated: authority, control, and a system designed to erase individuality. Belichick's teams were built on discipline and silence. Roles were assigned, not negotiated. Players were expected to disappear into the scheme. For most, that structure created efficiency. For Shannon Sharpe, it created friction. Whenever Sharpe faced Belichick-coached defenses, the message was unmistakable. He was not just another tight end to be covered. He was a problem to be neutralized, bracketed, hit early, disrupted, before routes could even develop. The goal was not just to stop production, it was to suppress presence. Belichick understood something fundamental about Sharpe. His voice mattered as much as his catches. If you could quiet one, the other might follow. So defenses were instructed to test him physically and mentally. Late contact, tight coverage, relentless pressure in the middle of the field. Sharpe recognized the tactic immediately. This was not personal animosity. It was philosophical conflict. Belichick believed stars should submit to the system. Sharpe believed systems should adapt to greatness. The tension reached its peak in high-stakes games where every yard felt contested. When Sharpe caught passes against Belichick's defenses, they were rarely clean. Bodies arrived early, hands grabbed late. Every completion came with punishment, and every punishment was designed to send a message. You are not special here. Sharpe answered the only way he knew how. He kept talking. He kept celebrating. He kept demanding the ball. Each catch became defiance. Each first down became disruption. Belichick never responded publicly. That silence was intentional. Silence was power. But on the field, the chess match was relentless. Adjustments, double teams, defensive rotations aimed squarely at limiting Sharpe's influence. For Sharpe, this rivalry was never about one coach. It was about what Belichick represented. A league shifting toward uniformity, toward systems that valued obedience over expression, toward an NFL that was becoming less tolerant of voices like his. The cold truth is simple. Belichick respected Sharpe enough to fear him, and fear in Belichick's world demanded containment. Sharpe never accepted containment. Even when defenses succeeded statistically, they failed symbolically. They could reduce numbers, but they could not erase presence. They could not silence him. This rivalry mattered because it marked a turning point. The NFL was evolving. Systems were tightening. Personalities were being managed more aggressively. And players like Shannon Sharpe stood at the edge of that transition, refusing to disappear quietly. Only one rivalry remained. The most visible. The most iconic. The moment when everything Sharpe stood for collided with football's biggest stage. The rivalry that defined Shannon Sharpe more than any other was not built over seasons of hatred. It was forged in a single moment that captured everything he represented: confidence, defiance, and an absolute refusal to shrink. The setting could not have been larger. A championship game, a rising dynasty, a young quarterback named Tom Brady leading a team that embodied discipline, silence, and inevitability. On the opposite sideline stood Sharpe, older, louder, and fully aware that this might be his last chance to speak where it mattered most. The game was tight. Tension filled every snap. Defenses ruled the field. And then Sharpe made a catch that cut through the noise. A critical play that shifted momentum. As he stood up, instead of celebrating quietly, he walked to the sideline, picked up a phone, and dialed the White House. The gesture was theatrical. It was mocking. It was unforgettable. To some, it was disrespect. To others, it was comedy. To Sharpe, it was something else entirely. It was declaration. He was announcing that this moment belonged to him, that this stage could not silence him, that no dynasty, no system, no rising superstar would push him into the background. Tom Brady said nothing. He did not need to. His response would come later through championships and legacy. But in that moment, the contrast was clear. Brady represented the future, controlled, minimal, ruthless efficiency. Sharpe represented a fading era of expression where personality still fought for space against order. The league was uncomfortable with that moment. Cameras loved it, officials tolerated it, critics debated it, and fans remembered it. Because it exposed a tension the NFL was trying to resolve: entertainment versus control, individuality versus brand. Sharpe knew exactly what he was doing. This was not trash talk aimed at an opponent. It was commentary aimed at the league. A reminder that football was not just a system of plays, but a theater of personalities. And that removing personality stripped something vital from the game. For Brady, the rivalry was indirect. He would go on to define an era built on restraint and repetition. For Sharpe, this was the exclamation point. A final act of defiance before the league moved on without him. The cold truth is this: Shannon Sharpe never defeated Tom Brady's dynasty in history books, but he defeated something else: the idea that stars must disappear quietly when the league decides it is time. That phone call was not about arrogance. It was about visibility. About claiming a moment that would not be erased by future narratives. And it worked. When people remember Shannon Sharpe, they do not just remember the rings. They remember the voice, the confidence, the refusal to be managed. That is why this rivalry stands above the rest. Because it was never about hatred. It was about presence. Not every defining relationship in Shannon Sharpe's career fit neatly into the category of rivalry. Some were more complicated, built on trust tension and an unspoken contest for control. John Elway represented that complexity. Elway was the face of Denver, the franchise, the leader whose authority was never questioned. Sharpe was the voice, the disruptor, the presence that demanded attention even when it made people uncomfortable. Together they formed one of the most productive pairings in NFL history. But beneath the success there was friction. Elway led with restraint. He spoke carefully. He carried himself as the embodiment of professionalism. Sharpe did the opposite. He talked openly. He challenged defenders verbally. He turned games into performances. For a team built on structure, Sharpe's personality tested boundaries. There were moments when Elway welcomed it. Sharpe's confidence loosened defenses and energized the offense. But there were also moments when it felt like competition. Not for stats or glory, but for narrative. Whose team was it? Whose moment was it? Sharpe understood that quarterbacks are protected by legacy and position. He also understood that tight ends are often asked to sacrifice visibility for function. He refused that trade. When he demanded the ball, it was not just strategy, it was assertion. This relationship mattered because it showed Sharpe's maturity. He could coexist with authority without surrendering identity. He could respect leadership without shrinking his own presence. That balance was rare in an era that demanded conformity. The cold truth is subtle. John Elway did not try to silence Shannon Sharpe, but the structure around Elway often did, and Sharpe navigated that tension without breaking the partnership that brought championships. This bonus pick is important because it shows what Sharpe was capable of when respect flowed both ways. Not submission, not rebellion, but coexistence. By the time Shannon Sharpe reached the final stretch of his career, the conflicts no longer felt isolated. They formed a pattern. Each rivalry, each confrontation, each moment of resistance pointed toward the same conclusion. He was never fighting just one opponent. He was fighting an idea of what football wanted him to be. Beyond trophies and glory, Sharpe's legacy was shaped by friction. The friction between expression and control, between innovation and tradition, between a player who demanded space and a league that preferred order. Every conflict forced the NFL to make a choice: adapt or resist, accept evolution or punish it. On the field, his impact was undeniable. He changed how the tight end position was understood. No longer just an extra blocker, no longer an afterthought in the passing game. He became a primary weapon, a mismatch, a voice defenses could not ignore. The numbers told part of the story, but the influence told the rest. After Sharpe, the league could no longer pretend tight ends were interchangeable parts. Off the field, the tension followed him into retirement. The same traits that made him polarizing as a player made him unmistakable as a commentator. He spoke without hesitation. He challenged narratives. He questioned authority. In many ways, retirement simply moved the battleground. The helmet was gone, but the voice remained. This continuity matters. It proves the conflicts were never situational. They were personal and philosophical. Sharpe did not change to fit the NFL. He forced the NFL to react to him. That reaction shaped not only how players were used, but how they were allowed to be seen. The league eventually embraced personalities' branding and expression, but it did so cautiously, on its own terms. Sharpe's career existed at the edge of that transition, early enough to face resistance, late enough to influence change. That made his journey uniquely confrontational. The cold truth is that progress often looks like conflict before it looks like legacy. Sharpe paid that price repeatedly. He absorbed hits meant to discourage him. He faced criticism designed to soften him. He endured systems that tolerated his production while resisting his presence. And yet, when the story is told honestly, it becomes clear. Those conflicts were not distractions. They were the engine. Without them, Shannon Sharpe would have been productive. With them, he became transformational. His legacy is not just measured in championships or honors. It lives in the players who followed. Tight ends who spoke freely, who demanded targets, who built brands without apology. The league that once tried to keep him small now profits from the space he forced open. That is the final irony. The NFL resisted Shannon Sharpe because he arrived too early, too loud, too different, and then it learned from him anyway. When the lights faded and the debates quieted, one truth remained. Shannon Sharpe did not seek conflict for attention. Conflict found him because he refused to be invisible. If you have followed Shannon Sharpe's journey from the shadows of a small program to the center of football's biggest stages, one question should linger. How many voices like his were forced to fight just to be heard? And how many were never given that chance at all? His story challenges the way we remember greatness, not as something clean and obedient, but as something disruptive and uncomfortable. Sharpe's legacy invites debate because it refuses simplicity. He was not just a champion, he was a catalyst. Now it is your turn to decide what mattered most. Was it the championships, the evolution of the tight end position, or the moments when he refused to stay quiet in a league built on control? Which rivalry defined him in your eyes? The league that resisted him, the defenders who tried to intimidate him, or the systems that attempted to manage his voice? If this story made you rethink what football greatness really looks like, there is more waiting beneath the surface. The NFL's golden age is full of legends whose truths were never fully told, whose conflicts were edited out of highlight reels, whose voices were softened by time. Subscribe to NFL Hidden Truths for more stories that go beyond the trophies and into the tension. Stories where greatness is forged through resistance, not compliance. Because the most important truths in football are rarely comfortable, and they are almost never quiet. If you enjoyed uncovering these hidden truths, make sure to like this video, share your perspective in the comments, and join us as we continue exploring the untold stories that shaped the NFL forever.